I am here with Ravens assistant GM Eric DeCosta at the Senior Bowl. And Eric, last year you guys drafted four defensive players at the start of the draft. Is it safe to say that you have more eyes on the offensive drills this year at the Senior Bowl?
Well, I think, Ryan, we want guys who make plays. We want difference makers at all the various positions on offense and defense. We want guys who can score touchdowns, guys who can prevent touchdowns, and guys who can impact games. And whether they're on offense or defense, it doesn't matter at this point.
Offensive playmakers have been a big source of conversation. You guys just got back from Jupiter at Steve Bisciotti's house. Was it a big source of conversation there that, hey, we need to add some offensive playmakers?
Well, I think we do. And I think everybody realizes that. We want guys that can catch balls, make contested catches, and then also after they catch the ball, make plays with their feet, break tackles, make guys miss, and score touchdowns.
Last year, this is the same event. I remember we talked about cornerbacks, and you said, hey, we could take one in the first round. We could take one in the first and second round. You look at wide receiver this year, is it a similar position? Is the talent there at the top of the draft? And do you feel like you guys are in a position where you're going to be looking for a wide receiver early?
Well, this year, I think no question there are a couple first-round wideouts. Now, they're not a lot. And as we saw last year, 3 guys went in the top 10 picks in the entire draft at the wideout position. This year, I think the strength of the draft with the wideout position is there might be 8 or 9 guys that you feel comfortable taking in the second and third rounds. That was not the case for us last year.
Gotcha. James Washington out of Oklahoma State, one guy here at the Senior Bowl who there's buzz about him being a first-round guy along with Calvin Ridley. Just what have you seen from James Washington, and do you feel like he probably will end up going in the first round somewhere?
Well, James has been a very, very consistent and productive player in Oklahoma State over the last 3 years. He's built like a running back. He's got a very strong body. I think he's got great hands, a competitiveness about him. I think he's a guy that can make plays in the red zone for you. He can make plays in the short and intermediate passing game. He's a competitive guy who scored a lot of touchdowns.
At running back, it's kind of an interesting position, it looks like to me, because there's a lot of young players, and we have depth there. Kenneth Dixon, we have Buck Allen, Alex Collins, obviously. But do you look at it and say, hey, that's still a position that we could address aggressively in the draft, whether it be high or wherever? And it seems like there's a good group in this year's class, too.
Well, first of all, we love the backs that we have. Alex was a revelation for us this year. We expect Kenneth Dixon to come back and look like the player that he looked like last year at the end of the season. And Buck's a guy that probably improved as much as anybody on our team from the beginning of the season to the end of the season. We've also got Danny Woodhead, who fills that kind of a niche position. In this year's draft, I think there's some guys that have special ability, game breaker ability, guys that can catch the ball on third downs, guys that can take it the distance. We don't necessarily have that type of guy. If there's a guy that we think is a special running back, a guy that can take a game over with his unique skill set, we'll take that guy. And there are some guys in the draft that can do that.
Right. At quarterback this year, John talked about how the team might look to draft somebody more this year than in past years. Mm-hmm. Do you look at that as a situation where you're looking for probably a mid-round prospect? And is it different for you this year? Do you spend a little bit more time watching some of these guys?
Well, I think obviously it's probably the most important position on the field. We look at these guys every single year, and for us it's always about how they stack up against other players. This is a very good year for quarterbacks, and there's probably 5 or 6 quarterbacks that have the chance to be drafted in the first round, possibly second round. We'll know those guys, but there's also going to be a pool of guys that go in the second, third, fourth round. We'll know those guys as well, and if we really covet a guy and he's there, we'll take him.
We spent a lot of time talking about Joe Flacco, and what do you look at as the way that you can most help Joe going forward to kind of have more games like you did in the second half of the season than in the first?
Well, we've got to continue to put good players around him. I think it starts with the guys up front. We're encouraged by the offensive line. We're excited to get Marshall back. Alex Lewis coming off his injury. We're excited to get those guys back. That bolsters our depth with 2 guys that we think are impact players for us. Some other guys. We've got some UFAs. We'd love to have all those guys back. James Hurst is a free agent for us. Ryan Jensen's a free agent. Both those guys really are players that we want to bring back because of the way they played for us this year. And then I think just playmakers. Bringing in guys that have a chance to make a play. When things break down, Joe can trust these guys to make a play. They may not be open, but they're going to catch the ball. Or they get open, catch the ball, and make a play. In a critical situation. We depend on Joe to really kind of get rid of the football and make plays, but the other guys have to live up to their standard as well. We think there's some guys in the draft who can do that.
And lastly, there's some buzz about how the New Orleans Saints kind of could be the example for the Ravens. They missed the playoffs 3 straight years, had a killer draft last year, got a ton of playmakers, back in the playoffs this year. You guys, I know you're always working hard to have the best draft you can, but is there a renewed or even stronger focus this year to really nail this draft? Do you feel like if you can hit on this draft, that could get the Ravens over the hump?
Well, we need players, and that starts with me, that starts with Ozzie, the coaching staff, the scouts. We need players. We got to bring in as many talented guys as we can. We feel the same urgency every single year, quite honestly. We're disappointed, but we're not distracted by our goal, which is to really take this thing to another level, to finish strong, make the playoffs, win our division. It starts there. And I think if we could just make it into the tournament, we've got a chance because we've got some really battle-tested players. We've got a quarterback who excels in the postseason. We've got great leadership. We just have to get there. And I think if we can have a killer draft, that's going to be a really big piece of the puzzle for our team. Bringing in some guys that come in right away, contribute right away, and impact our team. That's going to help us invaluably.
Cool. Eric DeCosta, thank you very much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.